My name is Kelsey, but you can call me Kels, and you are listening to the Queer in Alberta podcast.
What's your story? What's your sign? It's like we're twin flames in a different life.
You guys, I have pizza coming and it's Domino's, so if my attention span is just not here, slay. You forgive me, you understand me. We're in our thrifty girl era. Welcome back to another episode of Queer in Alberta, the podcast where I talk to 2S LGBTQIA plus Albertans to share their stories. If you are new here, my name is Kelsey, but you can call me Kels. I am a queer Filipino Canadian and I use she, her pronouns, and I record and film and do all the things for this series here on Treaty 7 territory in the city of Lethbridge, Alberta. We are continuing to deliver those episodes that I made for Telus Storyhive. Today, we are delivering episode 4 with Alexis Hilliard, who you might recognize as the host of the one and only Stump Kitchen. Alexis is a phenomenal advocate for disability awareness based in Edmonton, Alberta. If you haven't heard of Stump Kitchen, this is a cooking show that she's had on YouTube for several years now, I believe, and she gives you all of the details of how it started, why it's important to her, and about the powerful representation she's been able to create through the series. But Alexis is incredibly eloquent and well-spoken. I had such a wonderful time chatting with her, and I know that you're going to love this interview. Without further ado, episode 4 for Telus Storyhive Season 1 of Queer in Alberta, featuring Alexis Hilliard, the creator of Stump Kitchen. Disabled is a 4-letter word fear that we have in dominant society. People are scared to talk about it. It's taboo.
What's your story? What's your sign? It's like we're twin flames in a different life.
Hello, I am Alexis Hilliard. My pronouns are she, her, and I live in Edmonton, Alberta. I was born without my left hand and just like below the elbow before the hand. And so I call my arm my stump. And Stump Kitchen started because I had to do, I had to start cooking for myself. But like I wasn't really a cook before, and so I had to get into the kitchen, but I was nervous. I just started off with some easy ingredients and easy recipes, and without even really realizing it, I was using my stump as a tool. So like I was using it to juice lemons, to mash potatoes, to scoop batter out of a bowl for waffles, and my partner was just like, this is so great, like you need to film this. But then I did, and I put out one episode, and I guess the rest is history. Through the show and through cooking online and really putting my body out there, I just got to kind of see myself in a new light and really appreciate the body that I have, the body that I was given, and didn't really realize what kind of spaces it was creating for others to kind of see themselves. But it became this tool of celebration of disability in a way. I feel very lucky with my coming out experience because I went to a very, more inclusive high school in the 90s. I went to Victoria School. There were a lot of like art students, and one of my friends, like I met my first trans pal in high school who was like openly trans and out. So I was like really immersed in this artistic, queer, beautiful culture at in high school at a younger age. Like I came out when I was 15, and I think had I not had that environment, it would have taken me a little while to figure stuff out. But because I had that, I was able to flourish, and my friends were so supportive. So I was in this like protected bubble in a way in high school. My mom took a little while to kind of get around to it, I think, just because like you have a kid, right? And you think, all right, this is how my kid's life is going to be. She's going to grow up and have babies and get married. And then when you come out, you're like, oh, just like throwing a wrench. Just kidding. Yeah, which is hilarious because right now I have a awesome partner and a child, and I'm in the same gender relationship. So it's just like, anyway. So, but she did come around and then became an extremely amazing ally, supporter. And my dad was like my biggest fan from, day one. And he was like, whatever you need to feel comfortable in your own skin, I'm here for it. And he had, in his youth, like in his like early 20s, he was hanging out a lot in like the drag queen scene in Montreal and Toronto with one of my cousins. I had no idea. He told me all this after I came out. He's like, "Oh yeah, I've been to thousands of drag shows," and I was like, "What?
No big deal."
Excuse me?
Yeah.
Anyway, so that part I think I was really lucky for, and then of course my little sister has just been like she marched in pride parades before I did, before I was brave enough to. Like she would go on my behalf, and it was just like she's been lovely. I think just like some of the negative experiences I've experienced were like one time in West Ed, I was walking with a partner and we were holding hands, and this guy, there's two guys together walking towards us, and one of them like kind of shouldered me, like bumped into me on purpose, and I didn't fall down, but I like got kind of like shocked, and he said this like the weirdest insult. He just said "dirt for life," and I was like, in hindsight, I'm like, what kind of an insult is that? Like, good try, buddy. Yeah, so it didn't hurt my soul, but it made me scared. And then, and then one time I was driving on the highway with a different partner, and I think I was just like leaning on her shoulder or something, like as she was driving, and I was just like leaning, and this huge truck full of dudes. Why is it always dudes? So we were at a red light, and they could see us, and I was just like ignoring them, like whatever. And we were driving, I think, to Red Deer, home to Edmonton from Calgary. They chased us on the highway. Like, they kept coming up beside us and yelling things out the window. And we couldn't, like, we just kept the windows up because we didn't want to hear them. We tried to slow down. And finally, we turned into a store in Red Deer, and they left us alone. But it was terrifying. But other than those two experiences, yeah, I do feel lucky that I haven't experienced worse, because it is a hard place to be queer. And it's a wonderful place to be queer, because there are, I think, extremely rich and resilient and powerful communities all over Alberta, not just the cities, but all over in different spaces that are doing such important work that, I think that we don't talk about often. So
Love that you said that it's a hard place to be queer, but it's also a beautiful or wonderful place to be queer. For me, I've really wanted to find a balance in honoring people's experiences, positive or negative, but also uplifting stories like yours that show that, you know, Alberta can be a great place to live openly and freely and happily as a queer person.
Yeah, absolutely. There's such innovative work, such resourceful people, such smart people, and through the generations too. Like it's so neat that we've got generationally, you know, people to look up to that are older than our generation. Well, I'm a little older than your generation, but like older than us.
Slay.
You know, slay. Like Michael Fair and other people kind of, you know, moving in the world. I wouldn't want to be anywhere else. For my own experience, like I identify, I'm disabled. Like I have a disability, I identify as a disabled queer woman, and a lot of things to consider around intersectionality when I think about, you know, how to make spaces, like not just for me, I mean like for the people that I interact with my life, and how do I help to teach and talk about those things for other people, you know, put that out there on my platforms, through my show.
So many people that I've chatted with, whether it's, you know, queer identity as a POC or able-bodiedness and all these differences, once we start to really allow ourselves to take up that space for all of our identity and all of its facets, look at what happens afterwards, right? Like it's just kind of like this explosion of opportunity or fun or identity. It's so cool.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. And you just, we just become better by adding those experiences and stories of others to our own lives.
What does a fully accessible kind of venue look like to you?
Language is great. Like talking about pronouns, having accessible washrooms, having an all gender washroom available, even floors. I like having tables that are low down.
And when you were speaking about language, this comes up with like kind of a vulnerable thing that I want to ask you, because I think that a lot of people have good intention, but sometimes maybe they don't know the right language to use when talking to somebody from the disability community. And I have a friend who's disabled, and I've learned so much just from being her friend and learning what to say and what not to. Maybe could you if you're all right with it, go over some language that is okay to use with a disabled person versus what's not?
Absolutely. Yeah, that's a lovely question. And I think you're totally right around this, like, disabled is a 4-letter word fear that we have in dominant society. People are scared to talk about it. It's taboo, which is awful because that is from a long history of society treating the notion of disability and disabled people as less than, a burden, incapable, all these things that are untrue. I think first and foremost, whether or not you're talking about disability, in any topic, I try to model the language that people are using. So, for example, if somebody is identifying as agender or bisexual or whatever, those are the words that I'm going to use with them. Similarly for me, I call my arm my stump, and some people aren't sure. They're like, can I use that? Is that okay? And I'm like, yes, this is what I call my arm. Please call it my stump. I'm not a fan when people kind of make up their own words or call it, say, like residual limb, for example. I'm just like, no, thank you. That is not a term that I like very much. Some people love that, but every amputee, every congenital amputee or amputee otherwise, it's all very personal. So modeling language is really important, but also asking, like, hey, I heard you use the word stump to refer to your arm. Is that a word that I can use with you as well? Yes, totally. So asking folks, like modeling their language and then asking kind of like, is this appropriate? And similarly around disabled. So if I say, yeah, I am disabled, then you can say with that person, yes, she is disabled or whatever. Modeling that language and not being scared of it for ourselves. I think people are I see a lot of parents too, particularly, but a lot on social media, folks saying things like differently abled or I don't know, just things that are like euphemisms for the word. And that's a little bit patronizing because it almost like takes away the fact that actually, yeah, this person is disabled and that's not actually bad. It's handicapable or like there's just so many words and I'm just like, it's okay, you can say disabled, but it's a lot of unlearning because I think people still think it's a 4-letter word and it's not. But that was like a process of learning for me too. I think when I came into Stump Kitchen and doing this work online and meeting so many other disabled creators, I had a time of myself being like, whoa, do I claim this word? Hang on a second. Wow. And I had to do a lot of unlearning of my own indoctrination, I guess, from society and culture that says disability is bad. We are able and so happy and proud to live the lives that we live that are completely valid as they are. They're not something to be pitied. They're not something to be like avoided or whatever. They're something to be embraced and celebrated.
We as like minority peoples from all kinds of different communities and respective backgrounds, like so often we are generalized, right? And that aspect you touched on about like ask the individual or model the individual in terms of the language they use when they talk about themselves, whether it's pronouns or being a part of the disability community. Like just ask that individual in person first how they feel about it instead of putting them under one broad sweeping category of language.
Absolutely. Yeah.
That makes me think about representation again, because in one of the videos you sent me, there's a shot of you doing, I think, an online class at home, and there's a bunch of kiddos on the other side of the screen, and you're all getting into it, and it looks so much fun. And I often think about, like, you know, representation in young audiences and how impactful that is. How does that feel for you to get to be able to do that?
It is like walking on the moon. It is so wonderful. And, you know, in part, I'm thankful for the technology that we have today for that. Because growing up, I didn't have internet or anything like, you know, and nor did I, you know, see a lot of people like me. It's not every day you walk down the street and you see another person with a limb difference, you know. And so now doing that for folks, particularly little ones, it's just, I don't know. It seems like too good to be true. It feels like so important, and I get to be the person to do it in a lot of ways, and to watch their little faces light up or laugh or joke, or say like, "That's how I do it too," or like, "Look at your arm, it's like me," or like, "Mom, look, she's got a butt." Like, it's such joy. So yeah, I just feel very lucky and honored to be able to work with little ones, whether it's filming with them or teaching them cooking stuff. Like, I do a lot of one-on-one cooking sessions with kids with limb differences too. And it's just the absolute best. A cool thing about my work is, Stump Kitchen is really centered around disability and cooking and having fun, but also my queerness. Like, before I did Stump Kitchen, I was doing a lot of work in queer advocacy and education. When I started cooking online and working with kids, my education degrees and my queer advocacy really helped me make my kitchen and practice way more inclusive than it would have, because I was like, doing some, educational teacher strategies to help kids feel really at home. I was talking about boundaries, like, is there any place on your body you don't want to be touched? Like, do you want a high five or not at all? Or like, what words to use to talk about your arm or your body? We can stop anytime you want to. We can take breaks. So just like making it very accessible as possible to begin with. So that queerness and that queer background for me, an advocacy part of my life, really helped support my show, I think, which was like lovely. It was like all of my careers coming together to make Stump Kitchen. And then my childhood joy of, I forgot to tell you, but when I was little and my sister and I would play, like, this was before we would practice different sayings for kindergarten. She was she really, really took to my arm. So when she was like 2 and a bit, she named my arm Bebe. Like, she was trying to say baby hand, but she just said Bebe. And so then Bebe became this personality, like this little sweet little guy. And Bebe, and then Biggie was my right hand, my full hand, and Biggie was like the bad guy, and Bebe was like the good guy. And they would put on shows for her. No, there's a whole backstory. It's amazing. And like, I would put on shows for her, and Bebe would always save the day, and she would just like laugh, and it's like, and the ongoing joke is in our family is that my mom was like, I swear they have toys. They don't have to just play with their arms. But like, all we did was play with Bebe. And to this day, if she's stressed or tired or just like needs a little stress relief, she'll be like, "Can I squeeze Bebe?" And she'll just like squeeze my Stump. So lovely. And so that childhood joy has come into my current life, because a lot of the kids that I work with and adults have personalities for their arms too. Like,
that's so cool.
So funny. And I think on that note, I'll say, like, Alberta in general has been very loving and responsive to my Stump as Bebe, and in general, like, they're just so kind. They interact with Bebe online, sometimes as Bebe, or just like, they're so like, "Oh, your Stump is so cute." Like, it's they really love me and my body, and I'm really happy and honored by that. So yeah.
Well, I think I'm already a new fan, like from immediately when I watch those videos, and definitely from talking with you today.
Thank you. Same. Same for you. I'm on YouTube, I'm on TikTok, I'm on Instagram, and just Stump Kitchen. And then I do speaking gigs and I do personalized cooking classes. So just find me online.
I'm a guess that this is you. It says "Up to Stump Mischief."
That's me.
That's you. Yeah. Perfection. Everybody listening and watching, do exactly what I did, whether it's on YouTube or TikTok, and give Alexis a follow. She's just doing amazing work, and we are so lucky to have had you here on the show with us today.
Thank you. It was a big honor. So great.
Aww, that makes me happy. Thank you so much for listening and tuning in to another episode of Queer in Alberta, featuring the one, the only Alexis. And I'm so inspired by how Alexis just seems to so naturally have this passion and this natural ease for advocacy. It shines in everything that she does, and I'm so happy that I got to meet her, that I get to call her a friend, and I hope to see her in person soon. Stay tuned for the final 3 episodes of this Queer in Alberta Season 1 for Telus Storyhive. Don't worry, I'm still creating content content for you. I've got some really cool interviews slated for the next few weeks, both for season 2 for Optic TV and just for the series longevity overall. And a few of them are a bit different from what we've seen in the past. You're definitely going to want to check that out. Absolutely. And as always, if you have been enjoying the series, I would really appreciate if you left a 5-star review or maybe some comments on YouTube, subscribe, all the fun things to stay in the loop of everything queer in Alberta. As always, my friends, no matter where you are listening from in the world today, whether it is Alberta, in one of the small towns or the big cities, or maybe somewhere else totally, I hope you are feeling celebrated, seen, and loved for the wonderful person that you are. Okay, keep an eye out for those other episodes. I'll be back soon. Bye!